There's an unbelievable amount of threads online asking what the difference is between the IS200 and the IS300. And since there isn't one video on YouTube that actually explains this, I've got both cars here today and I'm going to show you exactly what the difference is. Then maybe you American guys will be able to understand what we're talking about when we mention the IS200. Hey guys, I just quickly want to say thank you so much for 500 subscribers. It means the absolute world to me. So, thank you. So, I finally made the change from an IS200 to an IS300. And today I'm going to tell you the difference between the two. Okay, let's talk about engines because that's obviously what everybody wants to know. So, in the IS200, we've got the 1G FE engine. And in the 300, we've got the legendary 2JZ GE engine. Okay, let's jump into this 1G FE. The FE stands for fuel economy. So this engine is a 2-litre inline-six with dual overhead cams and VVTi. It's pushing around 155 horsepower and 195 newton meters of torque. It's got a cast iron block and a compression ratio of 10:1. Disadvantages of this engine are weak rods and displacement. So if you want to push this engine with a turbo or supercharger, you won't really get past 300 horsepower without your engine exploding. Of course, there's no replacement for displacement and 2 litres is not very much for a 6-cylinder. MPG is dependent on the way you drive, but it's anywhere between 20 and 30. When I had my IS200, I generally got between 23, 24, that kind of number. Moving on to the 2JZ GE. So this is the legendary Supra engine, but this is the NA version, so there's no turbo. So here we've got a 3-litre inline-six with dual overhead cams and VVTi. This engine runs around 210 to 215 horsepower, depending on who you talk to. And it's got around 290 newton meters of torque. It's got a cast iron block and a forged crank, which is really useful because it means that you can push the engine up to 1,000 horsepower on the stock crank. There are plenty of Supras that have done this with no problems at all. Compression ratio due to the VVTi is 10.5:1. Disadvantages for this engine are again in the VVTi version, which is in the IS300, weak rods. Unfortunately, we didn't get the non-VVTi version in the IS300, which meant that we had stronger rods. This is really useful if you want to do a turbo conversion, so if you are looking to go NAT, then you are limited to around 350 horsepower at the wheels. Although it is likely that the gearbox will fail before the engine does. And MPG is pretty terrible on these, looking between 18 and 25, depending on how you drive the car, but we all know that we don't buy this car and have this engine for fuel economy. If you are buying this car for fuel economy, you're buying the wrong car. I am actually planning on building this IS300 into a 600 wheel horsepower monster. This is going to include forged pistons, forged rods, a turbo conversion, manual swap, everything. So if you want to see this, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to show this in intricate detail, and I'm only a beginner myself, so you'll be able to follow along and see the mistakes that I make so that you don't have to make them yourself. Moving on to 0 to 60 times, there's a little bit of controversy here. The auto IS200 is incredibly slow with a 0 to 60 of 10.8 seconds. Lexus say that the IS200 will do 0 to 60 in 9.5 seconds, but the problem is 0 to 60 doesn't really tell the whole story of a car. The IS200 won't get to 60 in second gear, it'll only get to 57 miles per hour. So then you have to change to third for the last 3 miles per hour. That drastically affects the 0 to 60 time. And the IS300, 8.2 seconds. The auto box is old technology and it's a little bit laggy, so this is about right. The manual IS300 is around 7.5 seconds. It could be argued that with better tire technology, you know, these cars are 20 years old now, maybe a few tenths faster, but not much more than that. Of course, with manuals, it depends on how good a driver you are, so maybe you will get less or more than this. Gearboxes for the IS200 were both manual and automatic. The manual version is a J160, it's a 6-speed, and it goes back to a differential with a ratio of 3.9 to 1. The 4-speed automatic, which is called the A47DE, went back to a differential with a ratio of 4.1 to 1. If you wanted an LSD, you have to buy the sport model of the IS200, which is a 6-speed manual. So, gearboxes in the IS300, there was a manual and an automatic version available in the US, but Europe and the UK only got the autos. So anyone looking to buy an IS300 in the UK or Europe is going to have to settle for an automatic gearbox. If you live in the US and you're able to get hold of a manual, then the gearbox will be a W55, which was found in the old Mark III Supras. This gearbox is a 5-speed manual, and it goes back to a differential with a ratio of 3.7 to 1. Oh, I've just realised my t-shirt has paint all over it. I should have changed. So this gearbox is an A650E, it's a 5-speed auto, and it goes back to a differential that has a ratio of 3.9 to 1. So these ratios are only if you've got an LSD. So I'm going to show you now how to figure out whether you've got an LSD or not. All you have to do is look at your VIN plate. Your VIN plate is a tiny little rectangle plate around this big. So if you lift the bonnet of the car, it's right at the back. Okay, this is a close-up of my VIN plate. As you can see, you have a letter here, then you have a 0 and a number. And then this 4th character is the important thing to look out for. If it's an A, that means you've got an open diff. If it's a B, that means you've got an LSD. And if it's a C, that also means that you've got an LSD. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is have a look at the look of the car, the styling, and surprise, surprise, it's exactly the same. There are a few differences. On the 200, you get standard headlights. On the IS300, you get HIDs. The only other difference is if you're lucky enough to get a sport model for the 200, you do get tinted windows, back windows. This is a SE, so it didn't get that option. And on the 300, no matter which 300 you got, you get tinted windows on the back. So I'm just going to show you the headlights here. I know it's still daytime, but you can already tell the difference between them. So much brighter and whiter with the HIDs on the 300. And the 200, even though it's got Osram Nightbreaker laser bulbs in, it's still not as bright as the 300. You can't see it as much on camera as you can see it in person, but it is a huge difference. Now, I'm not sure if this is on every IS300, but my IS300 has the yellow sort of JDM bulbs in for the fog lights, which looks pretty cool. So let's have a look at the interior. The standard and the SE models, and maybe the LE model as well, had the standard looking steering wheel. Whereas if you look at the IS300, it has a 2-tone steering wheel. You also get this in the IS200 Sport. Both the 200 and the 300 both have manual handbrakes, so that's nice. There is a variety of options for wheels. They're all 17-inch. And I'm pretty sure that there's some that you can get for the 200 and some you can get for the 300. Just a warning, this is the 200 and the wheels do corrode pretty badly after a while, so just be wary of that. Here on this wheel you can see much worse corrosion. So you do get a CD player, and it's pretty much the same thing in both of them. The only difference in this one, which was put in by the last owner, was an aftermarket stereo. But yeah, no USB or anything like that. Obviously, it's an old car. Let's talk about cup holders, because everybody loves them. So they both have cup holders. One thing that you need to know, it's not such a problem in the IS300. In fact, it's not a problem at all. But in the 200, when you put a bottle, hold on. So if you have a manual and you put a bottle in here, it seriously gets in the way. So it's not the best positioning to have the cups. Just be mindful of this. All the controls here are exactly the same as the controls here. Of course, automatic looks, you got no clutch, but you do have a little footplate here. 300 also came with cruise control, which is definitely a nice feature if you're going to go on long drives. So the IS200 did come with cruise control if you have an automatic model. Otherwise, I don't think the manual ones did. So the dash is pretty much the same. Looks like a Swiss watch. It's pretty cool. The only difference is that this is the manual version, so it doesn't have this sort of cutout for all the LCD display. Because the IS300 is an automatic, you get this little display here, which shows you what gear you're in. The little box here is for when you're in manual mode. It will show you the number, so 2, 3, 4, and 5. The first gear is automatic. You'll get these shift paddles here. It's a bit different to the modern shift paddles. The down buttons are both on the top there, and behind you have an up button on each side. So which car is best? Kidding me? The IS300. Hey guys, if you could give the video a like, that'd be much appreciated. Subscribe if you want to follow along with the IS300 build, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.